from very different authors, but they're just numbered later. Okay, so we'll talk, just to even talk about this particular book, we want to have a little bit of background context about the Bible and about the canon. And so here we're going to be talking about, we're talking about Enoch, we're talking about Old Testament, or for what Christians call the Old Testament, also the Hebrew Bible for Judaism. And so although probably most people who are here who know, but not all Christians know, although it's published, kind of as a single book, I shouldn't walk over there, I guess. So anyway, in fact, are sort of Bible-like, or also sound, maybe sound like the Bible, and also are quite ancient and are written in many cases in Hebrew or Aramaic or maybe in Greek, that are not included in the Bible. That didn't make it. Of writings that get included, and so there's an acronym that's Tanakh here that's being made from Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim. I don't speak Hebrew, so I'm pronouncing this very badly, but the prophets, etc., down to knocking some of these books out even by the early second century, that there had been this very important translation of all of the texts occurring in the law of the 22. But anyway, scriptures in the Hebrew, Kings and Chronicles, and then, which is essentially an ancient Syrian, and so it's related, very closely related to Hebrew. But anyway, Hebrew would have been their liturgical language, so they read scriptures in Hebrew, but the language that they would be speaking every day is Aramaic. Anyway, so when none of the early Christians, though, none of those people, Jesus doesn't leave any writings at all, so Jesus never wrote a book and talk about this is my gospel, this is my message, or anything like that. And none of the early disciples wrote their message in Aramaic. Instead, when Christians got to writing, they were writing in Greek. And when they have, for example, there's many places in, let's say, the Gospels, where they have Jesus quoting then from the Hebrew Bible. They aren't having him the way he would have actually talked. He would have spoken in Aramaic, and then he would have said something in Hebrew, and then you would imagine that the translator who is writing the gospel down, who's writing it into Greek, would then translate, let's say, both the Aramaic and translate the Hebrew that Jesus is saying. Instead, the gospel writers are writing their own Greek story, and when they quote out of the Hebrew Bible, they quote from the Septuagint, right? So this is not a new translation of the text. They are using the Septuagint as the version of the Bible. So it's all very important then for the early Christians. Question, yeah. Does it lose its meaning? Anytime you translate anything, things change. And so unless you are, this is one of the reasons why in Islam you're not supposed to translate the Quran, right? So you're supposed to read that holy text in the original language, so you're not losing meaning. You have to study it. And likewise, Judaism, the rabbinical school, is you're continuously learning Hebrew and Aramaic so that you are able to get at the actual meaning of the text. The meaning changes when you translate it, and so the way Christians try to get around that is by looking at multiple translations and doing translation study all the time, And so, but yeah, if you're a Christian and you're approaching the Bible only in English, you are definitely encountering a different text than you would be if you were an ancient Hebrew reading it. Elizabeth.
My great-aunt wrote a book called The Hidden Books. I never read it. It's about the Old Testament Apocrypha.
Yes.
And I think what we're talking about is the books like Esdras and Tobit,
yes,
and so on, that are in the Septuagint but not in the canonical Old Testament.
Yes. So yeah, we'll get to that. And so we'll specifically what the Apocrypha are is that, like you say. So I'm just pointing out here, though, for early Christians, the Septuagint is very important because they're using that as scripture. They're not actually going back to the Hebrew, and they probably don't know Hebrew. So the Septuagint then is the basis for the Christian Old Testament. So when Christians started Christianity, some early Christians, as we'll talk about next week, felt that the Old Testament was completely unnecessary. And so, in fact, there's an early attempt, the earliest attempt in Christianity of making a canon was a kind of a radical guy named Marcion, who in the early 2nd century, who made a list where he absolutely excluded almost all the books of the New Testament that we think of as the Christian Bible, and he also said that the Old Testament is absolutely worthless. And so he had a very extreme position that pretty much everybody reacted against, right, in the early Christianity. Question? Yeah.
So I'm just trying to get my head around. Is the hypothesis that the texts for the New Testament were written by Jews who converted into this new religion, or Gentiles, or Jews and Gentiles? Because why Greek? Why wouldn't it be in Hebrew if they were originally Jewish who then got converted?
Right.
One would assume if it was written originally in Greek that it would be Greek authors, or am I wrong with that assumption?
Yeah, no, it's a very, very good question, because it is a little strange, and I pointed out because it's something that I think Christians often don't think about. And so, yeah, so ever since the conquest of Alexander the Great, so 350 years or so before Jesus is running around in his ministry, the whole eastern half of the Mediterranean and across Persia even have been conquered by Hellenistic kingdoms, which is to say Greek-speaking kingdoms. And part of the program has been to try to Hellenize, and try to Greekize all of the people. And so all through the zone that for example, of what we call, what became the Roman province of Palestine, but Judea, Galilee, all of those territories, those are interspersed with local people who are speaking Aramaic, and then people who have become Hellenized and are speaking Greek. And so very close, for example, to just a couple miles from Jesus' hometown of Nazareth, there is a Hellenistic city where they're speaking Greek. And so that's all interspersed. And so some of the people have all switched over and are speaking Greek. So anyway, to your point about are the early Christian writings of the New Testament, are they primarily written by people who were Jewish, who then converted and became Christians? Or are they just people who converted, directly from paganism, the Greek religion? It's a mixture. And so in some cases, it will be from Jewish people like Paul, but he is a Jewish person who was born in a Greek city. So he's born in a city called Tarsus, which is in what's now Turkey, but there's no Turks there at that time. So Turkey was a Greek-speaking part of the Roman Empire, paganism. And so in some of those cases, so when Luke is writing about stuff in Luke's gospel, Luke does the Old Testament. And the Septuagint is already perfectly translated because that was under inspiration, so you can just take it from the Greek and translate it directly into Latin. But Jerome went back to the Hebrew to do it. But the organization and the number of books are taken from the Septuagint.